There is a word most spiritual seekers avoid because it sounds too childish, too dishonest, too much like a game rather than a discipline. And yet this word, when understood rightly, may hold the greatest key to manifestation ever placed within human reach. The word is pretend. Not pretend to fool others, not pretend to escape reality, but pretend as the deliberate, sustained, sacred act of standing before the mirror of the world as the person you have chosen to become, and refusing to step out of that stance until the mirror has no choice but to reflect what you are showing it. Stay with me until the end of this message, because you are about to see why every great teacher of imagination, and Neville Goddard above all, insisted that the entire secret of the manifestation lies in this single act. Reality does not read your intentions. Reality does not measure your sincerity. Reality does not check whether you truly believe what you are showing it. Reality is a mirror, and a mirror has no choice. It must reflect what stands before it. Pretend well, pretend consistently, pretend from the inside, and the mirror will confirm you. Most people flinch at the word pretend. They associate it with children playing dress-up, with actors on a stage, with the small dishonesties of daily life. They have been taught that pretending is beneath them, that it is a form of lying, that a serious person does not indulge in such things. So when a spiritual teacher tells them that pretending is the very mechanism by which reality is shaped, they resist, they look for another word, they ask for a more respectable practice. But there is no other word that carries the same power. Affirmation is words. Visualization is images. Belief is a state that either arrives or does not. But pretending is the whole act, the words, the images, the posture, the tone, the small unconscious gestures, the atmosphere you carry into every room. Pretending is the full inhabitation of a chosen identity, held with such steadiness that the world around you begins to relate to you as though the identity were already true. Here is what most people do not realize. They are already pretending. Every hour of every day, they are pretending. They are pretending to be the one who cannot. They are pretending to be the one who is too tired. They are pretending to be the one whose past has fixed the shape of the future. They are pretending to be the one for whom good things happen only rarely, and only to others. They do not call this pretending. They call it being realistic. They call it knowing themselves. They call it the truth. But the mirror does not know the difference between what you call realistic and what you call pretending. The mirror only knows what stands before it. And whatever stands before it long enough, with steadiness, with feeling, with the quiet conviction of a settled identity, the mirror must reflect. The question is not whether you will pretend. Everyone pretends. The question is whether you will pretend the life you want, or continue to pretend the life you have. Here is what changes everything. The mirror is not judging you. The mirror is not weighing your worthiness. The mirror is not deliberating over whether your assumed identity matches your history, your current bank account, your relationships, or your inner doubts. The mirror simply reflects. If you stand before it as the one who has, it will begin to reflect the world of the one who has. If you stand before it as the one who is loved, it will begin to reflect the world of the one who is loved. If you stand before it as the one who is well, it will begin to reflect the world of the one who is well. And it will do this without asking your permission, without checking your credentials, without pausing to verify that you have earned the right to occupy the state you have chosen. The mirror serves whoever stands before it. This is the operative law that most people find hardest to accept. They want the universe to be moral, to give them what they deserve, to reward their sincerity. But the universe of imagination is not moral in that sense. It is faithful. It reflects the identity you present, whether you have earned it or not, whether you deserve it or not, whether anyone else agrees with it or not. A child stands before the mirror in her mother's shoes and a scarf tied around her waist as a gown. She declares herself a queen, and within the small world of her play, she is the queen. She walks like one. She speaks like one. She commands like one. And the household, entering the room, plays along without knowing why. They bow slightly, they laugh gently, they offer her tea. The world of the room, for that moment, has arranged itself around what she pretended into being. This is not trivial. This is the exact mechanism of manifestation, condensed into the play of a child. She did not doubt. She did not weigh her worthiness. She did not check whether she had earned the right to be a queen. She simply pretended, wholeheartedly, and the small world of the room responded. You have forgotten how to do this. Somewhere along the way, someone told you that pretending was for children, that grown-ups must be sober, that adult life required a certain resignation to what is. And you agreed, and you stopped pretending the good, and started pretending the ordinary, and eventually the ordinary began to feel not like pretense, but like the very fabric of reality. But it was always pretense. It always is. The only question is which pretense you will practice with your life. Consider now the mirror in more detail. A mirror does not create the image. The mirror does not decide what will be shown. The mirror does not add anything of its own. It receives whatever stands before it and returns it, without comment, without judgment, without delay. In principle, though the returning may seem to take time in the world of appearances, your outer life is such a mirror. It has no independent will. It does not decide whether to give you what you want. It receives the identity you present most consistently, most deeply, most quietly, and it returns to you the reflection of that identity in the form of circumstance. If the identity presented is that of the anxious seeker, the mirror returns circumstances that give the anxious seeker something to seek. If the identity presented is that of the abundant one, the mirror returns circumstances that give the abundant one something to enjoy. If the identity presented is that of the beloved, the mirror returns circumstances that give the beloved something to be loved by. Consider also the canvas. A canvas does not choose the painting. A canvas does not resist the brush. A canvas does not argue with the artist about whether the colors are appropriate or the composition is respectable. The canvas receives whatever is placed upon it and holds it as the true painting until the artist decides to paint something new. Your life is such a canvas. It has been receiving, for as long as you have been alive, whatever identity you have most consistently painted upon it. And it will continue to hold that painting until you take up the brush again and paint something new. Consider also the stamp upon soft wax. Molten wax poured into a seal takes the shape of whatever stamp is pressed into it. It does not decide. It does not weigh the design. It does not wonder if the design is worthy. It simply becomes what the stamp has pressed into it. And when the wax hardens, the shape is fixed. The subconscious mind is such wax. The identity you press into it, held with feeling and consistency, becomes the fixed pattern from which your outer world is stamped. This is why the pretending must be sustained. A single moment of pressing does not fix the wax. Only a steady, patient impression, held long enough for the wax to receive it, produces the seal. So how do you actually pretend into a new identity? Not by performing outwardly for others to see. Not by declaring your new identity to friends who will only doubt you. Not by dressing the part while your inner life still occupies the old part. The pretending must be from the inside. It begins in the quiet chamber of your own awareness, where no one is watching, where no one can approve or disapprove, where the only witness is your own consciousness. There, in that inner room, you assume the identity you wish to inhabit. You do this not as a wish, not as a hope, not as an experiment, but as a fact quietly accepted. Ask yourself, if the desire had already been fulfilled, how would you carry yourself through this ordinary hour? Not on the day of celebration, not in the moment of great news, but now, in this ordinary hour, going about the ordinary tasks of an ordinary day, how would the fulfilled version of you move, breathe, respond, react? The fulfilled version of you would walk with a certain calm. He would breathe without urgency. He would look at small annoyances with the amused patience of one who no longer takes them personally. He would speak to himself with the tenderness of someone who has nothing to prove. He would meet the eyes of others without measuring himself against them. Pretend this now, not by performing outwardly, simply by allowing the inner quality of the fulfilled version to take up residence in your body, your posture, your inner speech, your quiet responses to the passing moments of the day. You will find that this is possible. You will find that the fulfilled version is not far away. He is not somewhere in a future you have not yet earned. He is standing quietly behind the door of the current version, waiting to be invited forward. Invite him, then let him stay. The pretending must include the small things. It is easy to pretend the fulfilled version in grand moments. It is harder to pretend him while stuck in traffic, while opening a bill, while receiving news that does not match the identity you are claiming. But these are the moments that determine whether the mirror will hold the new reflection or fall back into the old one. When the small friction arrives, and the old identity rushes back to seize the moment, pause. Return to the fulfilled version. Ask, how would he handle this? And then, gently, let yourself handle it that way. Not perfectly, not without slipping, but return again and again to the pretending, until the pretending becomes so familiar that it is no longer a performance but a resting place. Sleep is also part of this practice. Enter sleep in the posture of the pretended identity. Feel yourself sinking into rest as the one for whom the wish is already fulfilled. Do not review the day's failures. Do not rehearse tomorrow's worries. Simply carry into sleep the quiet feeling of the fulfilled version, and let that feeling be the last thing your consciousness holds before the darkness receives you. The subconscious, receiving this steady impression, night after night, begins to accept the pretended identity as its own. And when the subconscious has accepted it, the outer world must eventually confirm it, because the outer world is nothing more than the visible surface of what the subconscious has decided is true. Now notice what happens as the pretending deepens. The line between pretending and being begins to blur. At first, the pretended identity feels awkward. You know you are pretending. You feel the gap between the identity you are assuming and the circumstances that surround you. The old voice comments constantly, reminding you that this is not yet true, that you are only playing at it, that the pretending is thin and might collapse at any moment. But something quiet happens with repetition. The pretending stops feeling like performance. It begins to feel like memory, as if you have always been this, as if the old identity, not the new one, was the pretending. And in a certain deep sense, this is exactly what has happened. The old identity was the earlier pretending, the one you did not know you were doing, the one you had inherited without examination. And now, having chosen a new pretending, you are simply exchanging one for another, but this time with awareness, this time with intention, this time with the full participation of your creative faculty. The mirror begins to catch up, not all at once, not with fanfare. Small things shift first. A conversation goes differently than it once would have. An opportunity appears in an ordinary moment. A person treats you as though the pretended identity were already real, and you notice, and you almost smile. The mirror is beginning to reflect. Then more things shift. The atmosphere of your days changes. The kinds of situations you find yourself in change. The rhythm of your inner life changes. The circumstances that used to define your life no longer have quite the same grip, because the identity that used to give them their meaning has quietly been replaced. And one day, without dramatic announcement, you realize that the pretending is over, not because you have stopped, but because the identity is no longer pretense. It has become simply who you are. And the mirror, faithful as always, has arranged the world around you accordingly. Some will object to this teaching. They will say, but is this not a form of self-deception? Is this not just fooling yourself into believing something untrue? The objection misunderstands the nature of identity itself. You have no identity apart from the one you assume. There is no true self hiding somewhere waiting to be discovered. There is only the identity you consistently occupy, and the world that faithfully reflects it. What people call the true self is simply the identity that has been occupied so long that it feels natural. But it too was once assumed. It too was once pretended. It too was once a role that gradually became so familiar it was mistaken for essence. You cannot be deceived by choosing a new identity, because there is no fixed identity you are betraying. There is only the freedom to choose which identity you will occupy, and the willingness to sustain the occupation until the mirror confirms. Others will object that pretending seems like a great deal of work. And yes, in the beginning, it requires attention. It requires patience. It requires returning to the chosen identity again and again through the small distractions of the day. But consider how much work you have already done pretending the old identity. How many hours of inner speech confirming lack? How many reactions rehearsing disappointment? How many decisions made from the assumption of limitation? The old pretending was also work, just work in the opposite direction. You are not adding to your labor. You are redirecting it. The same attention, the same energy, the same inner conversation that once maintained the old identity can now maintain the new one. And in time, the new one becomes as effortless as the old one ever was, but with circumstances that are entirely different. So as we come to the end of this message, take with you this single truth. You are always pretending someone. You cannot escape the pretending. You can only choose what you pretend. And so, today, choose deliberately. Choose the version of yourself you wish to inhabit. Choose the identity you wish the mirror to reflect. Choose the person you would be if the wish were already fulfilled. Not perfectly, not entirely, not without slipping. Choose it and begin to occupy it, and return to it whenever you notice you have wandered. Walk through the ordinary hours as the pretended one. Sit at the ordinary table as the pretended one. Meet the ordinary conversations as the pretended one. Sleep in the ordinary bed as the pretended one. Wake in the ordinary morning as the pretended one. When the old identity rushes back and insists that the pretending is silly, does not work, cannot possibly matter, answer it gently. Say within yourself, this too is a choice. This too is a stance, and I have chosen the other one. When the mirror still shows the old reflection, do not despair. The mirror is receiving. The mirror is beginning to change. What you have consistently presented to it, it must eventually return to you. This is not hope. This is law. Pretend without apology. Pretend without shame. Pretend with the quiet dignity of a child at play, who does not question whether her queendom is real, but simply occupies it, and by occupying it, makes it so. Reality has no choice. It is a mirror. It will reflect whoever you are willing to be steadily enough for it to catch up. Pretend the version of yourself the mirror has been waiting to see, and do not step out of that stance until the reflection is complete.